I let him think he won. I let him toast to his victory at our first anniversary, while his friends laughed in a group chat I wasn't supposed to see. He thought he played me for a fool, but by sunrise, I didn't just leave him. I erased him. Because in my world, you don't bet against a man who has nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Let me take you back further, 24 hours before the lodge, before the fireplace, the champagne, and the performance of my life. The night before our anniversary trip, Damien's phone lit up. At the same time, I sat at the edge of his kitchen counter going over the property documents for the surprise I'd been sitting on for 3 months. A 6-bedroom estate in Harlow County, the most expensive zip code in the country. I'd bought it outright, cash, in both our names. My anniversary gift to the man I'd decided, finally, to build a life with. The phone buzzed once, face up. The notification read, "The 12-month trophy." Bro, he's literally going to ask him to move in tomorrow, LMAO. My thumb hovered over the screen. The name of the group chat sat there, the 12-month trophy, and something cold and very small moved through the back of my mind, the way a single note played in the wrong key moves through a concert hall. You feel it before you understand it. I put the phone face down. I told myself it was a joke between men who thought they were funny. I told myself Damien had friends who were the kind of overgrown boys who named their group chats things meant to be ironic, provocative, meaningless. I told myself this because I wanted to believe it, because I had not spent 11 months opening myself, carefully, incrementally, at a pace I controlled, only to let a notification from a group chat I hadn't even read undo everything I'd chosen. I trusted him, so I put the phone face down, slid the property documents back into their envelope, and poured myself a glass of water. I did not open the chat. That was the last mistake I ever made when Damien Voss was concerned. The Montana Lodge sat 200 feet above a frozen lake, surrounded by 3 miles of private timber. Damien had booked it as a surprise for our anniversary. 12 rooms, a private chef, floor-to-ceiling glass on every wall. When our car pulled through the iron gates, I remember thinking, he knows me. He didn't. We arrived mid-afternoon. The private chef had laid out a late lunch, charcuterie, warm bread, a bottle of something Damien had clearly researched, and we sat together by the window and watched the light go out of the sky over the lake. He was relaxed in a way I'd always loved about him. Easy, no performance. I'd thought once that his ease was what made him different from the other alphas who'd circled me, all posture and strategy, always managing how they appeared. Damien had seemed, in those moments, genuinely present. I understand now what I was actually watching. A man who was comfortable because he believed he had already won. After lunch, he stepped out onto the lower deck to take a call. I excused myself to freshen up, and on the way back from the suite, I passed the half-open door of the study. I heard my name. Not called, said, the way you say a name when you're talking about someone, not to them. Easily, with a particular looseness in the voice that I had never once heard when Damien spoke to me directly. I stopped outside the door. I didn't announce myself. I stood in the corridor, hand raised to knock, and I listened. Yeah, he's already locked in, man. 11 months and he never suspected a thing. A laugh, low and satisfied. The laugh of a man recounting a good hand of cards. Tell Rook to transfer the 50. I said I'd do it in 3 and it took me more like 4 to actually get him, but the official date of the first kiss was inside the window, so. A pause. Someone is speaking on the other end. The group chat? Yeah, man, it's all in there. Every step. The gym angle was the cleanest. His dad vouching for me basically fast-tracked the whole thing. Once I was at the family dinner, it was basically over. Another laugh. He's actually a beat. Something shifted in his voice. Something almost uncomfortable, quickly corrected. He's exactly what everyone said he'd be. You know, worth the effort. Worth the effort. I stood in the corridor outside that door and felt the full architecture of the last year rearrange itself around me like a building whose foundations had been quietly removed while I was living in it. The gym, my father's vouching, the family dinner, The perfect positioning, the patience I had mistaken for character. The group chat I had refused to open. The 12-month trophy. There it was. There he was. I stood there for 4 full seconds. Then I raised my hand and knocked, 2 clean, unhurried knocks on the doorframe, and pushed it open with the ease of a man who had been a few steps away and heard absolutely nothing. Damien spun. The phone dropped to his side. Something moved across his face. Not guilt, not yet. Just the animal alertness of a man caught off guard. "Hey!" He recovered in under a second, which told me everything about how practiced the performance was. "Thought you were resting. Thought I'd see if you needed anything." I leaned against the doorway, arms loose at my sides, voice warm and unhurried. "Who are you talking to?" "Just Rook. Business thing." He pocketed the phone. "Nothing interesting." I nodded once, smiled the way he expected me to smile, easy, unguarded, the smile of a man who trusted completely. "The view from the study is better than the suite. Come find me when you're done." 2 minutes, he said. I turned and walked back down the corridor, and my heart did not race, and my hands did not shake, and my face did not betray a single thing, because the man who had been built by 31 years of doing everything with precision had just been handed a problem, and precision does not panic. It plans. The evening was extraordinary in the way that only evenings can be when one person is performing and the other is watching. Damien opened the champagne. He gave a toast. To us. To a year I'll never forget. His friends were watching through their phones in real time, I was certain. Someone in the 12-month trophy was already typing the update. I raised my glass. To a year I'll never forget, I agreed. And I let my voice carry every note of warmth he'd come to expect from me, and I watched his shoulders settle with the satisfaction of a man who believed he was in full control of the room. I let him have it. I put the property envelope, the Harlow County estate, the 6 bedrooms, the house I had built for us in my mind, room by room, back in my bag. I let him pull me close by the fireplace. I answered his questions about the future with careful, curated tenderness. I let the night close around us like a door I was walking through for the last time, and I memorized every detail of it. He slept well. He always slept well. I lay beside him in the dark and waited. When we arrived home the following afternoon, the anniversary trip cut short by a schedule conflict I had manufactured, smoothly over breakfast, Damien moved through the apartment with the loose-limbed ease of a man who believed everything was still exactly where he'd left it. He ran a bath. I sat in the living room with his phone in my hand. The passcode I'd memorized 6 months ago, not deliberately, but because I had an excellent memory and he'd never changed it. I opened the 12-month trophy. I read for 4 minutes without moving. 47 members, a year's worth of documentation, my schedule, obtained from the guards he'd bribed, photographs taken through doorways, me asleep, me at my desk, me at my father's gym, photographed from across the room with the caption, "Stage 2 complete, Daddy Ezekiel loves me now, LOL." Screenshots of my calendar, analyses of my emotional progression. He's softening. He smiled first today. Celebration messages after I'd kissed him first, after the gala, after my publicist confirmed us publicly. The original bet post, 16 months ago, 50,000 to whoever gets Soren Park to commit within 3 months. I'm taking the bet myself. Watch how this goes. A member named Rook89 2 days ago. 1 year tomorrow, he's going to ask him to move in, I guarantee it. Classic Soren does everything on his own terms, on his own timeline, right into the trap. Damien's reply? 3 laughing emojis. I put the phone exactly where I'd found it. I folded my hands in my lap. Through the bathroom door came the ordinary sounds of a man completely at ease in his own life. Water running, a drawer opening, a quiet, tuneless hum. The man I had loved, I understood now, had never existed. What had existed was a construct assembled specifically for my weaknesses, operated with enough consistency that even I, precise, guarded, deliberate, had stopped checking the foundations. The notification I had seen 2 nights ago and turned face down glowed in my memory like a coal. I trusted him. That is what it had cost me. Not my naivete, because I had not been naive. My trust, the one resource I had rationed my entire life, extended at last to someone who had budgeted for it as a line item in a $50,000 bet. I got up because I couldn't sleep. I moved to the desk, opened my laptop, and began working because I had approximately 2 hours before Damien woke up. I made 3 calls before 6. The first call was to Marcus Webb, my property attorney. "The Harlow County estate," I said. "I need to close the sale within the hour. Cash buyer preferred." "Marcus, the listing hasn't even—" "Call Brennan Cross." I kept my voice flat. "He's been trying to buy anything in Harlow County for 3 years. He'll move fast, and he'll pay above asking to keep me from changing my mind. Tell him the window is 90 minutes. Brennan Cross was Damien Voss's primary business rival, the man Damien had spent 18 months trying to outmaneuver for a development contract in the Eastern Corridor. I'd heard Damien say his name with clenched teeth on at least 4 occasions. Marcus called back in 41 minutes. Brendan Cross had signed. The estate that I had purchased with both of our names in mind, the house I had designed room by room in my imagination, the one where I had mentally placed Damien's books on shelves and his running shoes by the back door, transferred to Brendan Cross at 6:38 a.m. on the morning of our anniversary. I sent Marcus a 3% bonus and closed the laptop. The second call was to my head of security, Director Taejin Oh. "I need a full audit of the personal security roster, effective now," I said. "Cross-reference access logs against all Damien Voss's movement records for the past 18 months. Anyone's clearance was accessed, compromised, or supplemented during that window, terminate their contract immediately. Full severance per protocol. No negotiation, no rehire eligibility." Taejin was quiet for 2 seconds. "How many are we looking at?" "I don't know yet. That's why I need the audit." The report came back in 30 minutes. 4 guards. 2 of them had been with my detail for over a year. Men I'd trusted with my schedule, my home access codes, my private travel itineraries. Men Damien had bribed to feed me my every movement before he'd ever spoken a word to me. He hadn't positioned himself in my life through charm alone. He'd bought a map. All 4 contracts were terminated by 7:15 a.m. The third call was to my father. Ezekiel Park answered on the second ring, the way he always did before 7 in the morning, because my father believed the only people who called before 7 were either in trouble or making money. "It's me," I said. "I hear you." That was all he said. He'd always been able to read the frequency of my voice. "Damien Voss's Apex Athletic membership needs to be revoked, today. Full account closure, immediate blacklist from all affiliate facilities, and a memo to the front desk, if he presents himself in person, security is to escort him out without discussion." Silence. My father was not a man who asked unnecessary questions. "Done," he said. "Is this permanent?" "Permanent." "Anything else you need from me?" "No. Thank you, Dad." I hung up, set my phone face down on the desk, face down unlike his, and listened to the sound of Damien beginning to stir in the bedroom. He appeared at the doorway of the study at 7:42 a.m., hair disheveled, wearing the shirt I'd once told him looked good on him. He was smiling, the satisfaction of a man who believed he'd arrived at the finish line. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning. You're up early." He moved toward me, reached for my hand. I let him take it. "I have something for you. A year ago, I made a decision. I want you to know that I stand by that decision fully. It was mine. Everything I gave you was real, and I gave it freely, and I don't regret a single day of it." He blinked. His smile softened into something almost genuine. "Soren." "I also want you to know," I continued, my voice still even, still warm the way he'd always liked it, "that I bought us an estate in Harlow County 3 months ago. 6 bedrooms, private lakefront. I was going to give you the keys this morning. His expression cracked open, the real smile now, the one that had nothing to do with performance. Soren, I sold it this morning to Brennan Cross. The smile stopped. At 6:38 a.m., I added, he paid 12% above market. He's already dispatched an interior architect. He'll be moved in by spring. Damien's hand cold in mine. What? Your security clearance with my detail has also been revoked. I've terminated the 4 men you bribed to give me my schedule and access logs. My father revoked your Apex membership an hour ago. You'll want to retrieve your belongings before the locker refresh at noon. I released his hand. I read the group chat, all of it, the photos, the commentary, the bet. I paused. Congratulations on your 50,000, by the way. I hope it was worth it. He didn't move for a long moment. Then, Soren, wait, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I picked up my overnight bag, which I'd packed before he woke up. You heard a conversation in a bar and decided a man's love was a trophy to be mounted and shared. That's not something that needs explaining. It just needs to end. I walked past him toward the lodge's front entrance. My driver was already waiting. I'd messaged him at 5:80 a.m. Damien followed. You can't just, after a year, you can't just... I stopped at the door and turned to look at him one final time, not with anger, not with hurt, with the particular clarity of a man who has already moved 3 steps past the room everyone else is still standing in. The bet was 3 months. You kept it going for 12. I'm genuinely curious which part of that was supposed to be for me. I walked out. The door closed behind me without a sound. I don't cry in cars. I don't cry in airports. I don't cry in first-class cabins or hotel lobbies or executive washrooms. I have never in my life sat in a corner and let anything pull me under because a man I reduced myself to love turned out to be a $50,000 bet that his friends collected on before I even knew I was the prize. But I am not, underneath all of it, made of stone. I am made of the same material as every other person who has ever decided to love someone and discovered they'd handed that love to someone who treated it like a poker chip. I cry once, in the back of the car before we reach the highway. 43 seconds, precisely, which I know because I counted. I let myself feel the full weight of it. The betrayal, yes, but worse than that, the memory of choosing to trust. The notification I'd seen the night before and turned face down because I'd believed in him. Then I stopped, pressed my thumb and forefinger to the bridge of my nose, exhaled, and opened my phone to book a flight. Montana, 1 week. A reset location I'd used twice before. Once after a failed acquisition, once after my grandfather's funeral. High altitude, low noise. A place where I could recalibrate. The flight was in 4 hours. First class, single seat, window side. I booked a private lodge outside Glacier Ridge and texted Theo. Taking the week. Don't call unless it's a corporate emergency. Theo replied in under a minute. What happened? I'm coming. No, I sent back. I need the quiet. He sent a single period. In Theo's language, that meant, I understand. I'm here when you surface. At the airport, I moved through the private terminal with my bag on my shoulder and my sunglasses on and my shoulders exactly level, the posture my mother had drilled into me at age 9. The one that meant, this man is not available for your sympathy, your curiosity, or your conversation. I handed my boarding pass to the gate agent. She smiled, said, Have a wonderful flight, Mr. Park. The way she said my name told me she knew exactly who I was. I nodded once and stepped through the jetway. I had no plan beyond the week. That was itself the plan, to sit inside the absence of a plan and remember what I wanted before someone else told me what I was worth. I found my seat, 2A. The cabin was quiet. Outside, the runway lights were just beginning to blur with the early morning haze. I leaned my head back, closed my eyes, and waited for the world to get smaller. The scent reached me before the man did. I'd been half asleep for the first 30 minutes of the flight, that shallow, defensive rest that my body permitted when my mind was still processing damage. The cabin was cold and quiet. The seat beside mine, 2B, had been empty when we boarded. Then, the cabin door closed for the second time, which meant a late arrival. I didn't open my eyes. And then, rich chocolate, deep and dark, layered underneath with something warm and slow. Vanilla, the kind that came from a pod and not a bottle. Aged and genuine. The scent moved through the first-class cabin like a pressure change, like the temperature drop before a storm, and every nerve ending in my body came fully, irreversibly awake. I opened my eyes. The man settling into 2B was not looking at me. He was folding his jacket over the armrest with the focused calm of someone who performed every action with deliberate precision. Tall, 2 or 3 inches over 6 feet. Dark coat, no tie, the collar of his shirt open at the throat. The kind of composed that wasn't practiced but structural, as if his bones themselves had been engineered for steadiness. When he looked up, the full force of his attention landed on me like a hand pressed flat against my sternum. His eyes were the gray of deep water, the color light becomes when it has traveled too far from its source. He looked at me the way you look at something you weren't expecting to find, not with aggression, not with calculation, but with a recognition that neither of us had authorized. I looked away first. That had never happened before in my life. "I apologized for the delay," he said. His voice was low, unhurried, the voice of a man who had never once had to raise it to be heard. The briefing ran long. I said nothing. I kept my gaze on the window. "Soren Park," he said, then not as a question. I turned back slowly. "You have me at a disadvantage." The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, an acknowledgement. Elliot Vane. The name landed in the center of my chest like a stone dropped into water. Elliot Vane, Prime Minister of Montana, appointed at 38, the youngest in the state's history, former constitutional attorney. The man 3 national publications had described, in 3 separate covers, as the most strategically formidable political figure of his generation. The man who had, 14 months ago, single-handedly renegotiated a federal land use agreement that 3 previous administrations had abandoned, and who had done it in 6 weeks without raising his voice once. I knew his record. I had never expected to know his scent. "Prime Minister," I said. "Off the clock, just Elliot works." The moon goddess, that old, unscientific, undeniable force that omegas and alphas had been arguing about for generations, was making itself known in the base of my spine and behind my sternum simultaneously, a pull like gravity asserting its opinion. I recognized it. I had read about it. I'd spent my entire adult life assuming it would never apply to me, because I was by nature too deliberate for fate to catch off guard. Apparently, fate had not been briefed. "What takes you to Montana?" he asked. "A reset. I wasn't going to perform anything. I was too tired, and somehow his presence made performance feel not just unnecessary, but faintly absurd." He nodded, as if that were a completely sufficient answer. "That's a wise thing to need." "And you?" "Home," he said simply. "I prefer to fly commercial when the schedule allows. Keeps me honest." He paused. "Less honest than usual today. I may have arranged a schedule conflict that resulted in bumping the original occupant of this seat." My eyes came back to him. "Excuse me?" I saw the manifest. His gray eyes were steady, entirely unrepentant. "I know who you are, Mr. Park, not in a way that entitles me to anything. I want to be clear about that. But I recognized your name, and I thought it was worth a conversation." I studied him for a long moment. A year ago, I would have found this presumptuous. I would have made a quiet phone call that resulted in a very uncomfortable next 12 months for whoever had pulled this kind of maneuver. Today, I was sitting in the ruins of what trusting someone had cost me. And here was a man who had decided I was worth inconveniencing himself for and told me about it, plainly, without strategy or performance. "And if I'd asked to be moved to another seat," I said, "then I would have accepted that, and you would have had a quieter flight than the one you're going to have." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and produced a business card, which he placed on the armrest between us without extending it, and I would have regretted it for longer than is probably reasonable. I looked at the card. I didn't pick it up. "Why?" I asked. "Because I've been paying attention to you for longer than I should probably admit in an opening conversation," he said. "Not in a way that should alarm you, in a way that when I saw your name on a manifest at 6 in the morning after a very long week made me think the universe was making a suggestion I'd be an idiot to ignore." The moon goddess pressed a little harder against my ribs. I picked up the card. "I'm not in a good place for this conversation," I said. My voice was honest in a way I hadn't planned for. "I know. I'm not asking you to be. I'm just asking you not to close the door before you see what's on the other side of it." The flight to Montana was 4 hours and 12 minutes long. We talked for 3 of them. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. He was a constitutional attorney by training, which meant that he understood that the evidence a person chose not to present was usually the most important evidence of all. He saw the careful way I held myself, the precision of my composure, and he didn't try to dismantle it. Instead, he talked. He told me about Montana, the eastern ridge trails that were clear even in late winter, the one restaurant in Glacier Ridge that served lamb prepared in a way that had genuinely changed his life, the way the state legislature met on the ground floor of a building that was a hardware store in 1891 and had never had its original floors replaced, so that you could feel every footstep echo when the session got heated. He made me want to see it. On landing, he collected his jacket, stood, and extended his hand. I shook it. His grip was unhurried, the way everything about him was unhurried. "I'm at the Ridge House through the weekend," he said. "If you want that lamb recommendation, my number's on the card." He walked off the plane. No lingering, no backward glance. The move of a man secure enough not to perform confidence, because confidence didn't require an audience. I texted him on the second day. "Lamb? Tonight? 7?" He responded in 4 minutes. "I'll have a car sent at 6:30. The car was a black SUV with 2 state security personnel in the front, low profile, professional, invisible. He was waiting outside the restaurant when we arrived, wearing a dark sweater, no jacket. Montana Cold apparently had opinions about formal wear that he'd long since argued with. Dinner lasted 3 hours. He listened the way politicians rarely listened, not for the pause where he could reinsert himself, but for the actual content of what I was saying. I told him about Apex Athletic, about my father's philosophy, build something worth protecting, then protect it properly. He told me about his first year in office, the bill that had nearly broken his coalition, the night he'd sat alone in his office at 2 a.m. reading the state constitution from the beginning to remember why it mattered. "Did it work?" I asked. "It reminded me what I was protecting," he said. That was enough. I understood that, in the bones. On the third day, he took me to the eastern ridge trails he'd described on the plane. We walked for 2 hours. He didn't fill the silence unnecessarily. When he spoke, it was because he had something to say. When I spoke, he turned toward me with the full weight of his attention, the way the sun turns toward whatever is moving. On the 4th day, he arranged access to a private thermal pool on state grounds, not as a favor, not as a show of power, but because he'd mentioned I was a swimmer and he'd noticed my shoulder had been tense since the first dinner and he thought warm water might help. He arranged it, and then he didn't come because he understood the difference between care and presence, and that sometimes care meant leaving someone alone with their thoughts and a warm pool and nothing to prove. I called him that evening. "Thank you," I said. "How are your shoulders?" "Better." "Good." A pause. "I want to be honest with you." "All right." "I've been attracted to you since a charity event 2 years ago, where you declined 4 people in a single evening without anyone leaving unhappy. I thought, that is a man who knows the difference between what he owes the room and what he owes himself." He paused again. I'm not pursuing you because you're a challenge or a prize or an account to be opened. I'm pursuing you because I think we are built from similar materials, and I find that rare. My pulse moved through me steadily, not the hammering of panic or the tight frequency of performing, something quieter. A resonance. I'm not ready, I said. I know. I was heard very recently in a way that was specifically designed to exploit the parts of me I don't show people. I know that too. His voice was level. I'm not asking you to be over it. I'm asking you to let me show you, over time, that the thing that hurt you was not proof that trust is a mistake. It was proof that you trusted the wrong person. Those are not the same thing. On the 5th day, a credentialed news alert broke across my phone. A source had leaked internal communications from the Voss group, including a private group chat in which members discussed and documented the private life of a prominent Omega public figure without consent. The chat included photographs. The Omega had not been named in the leak. My team had ensured that, but Damien's name was front and center. My publicist texted, "Well, that's tidy." It was tidy. It had taken one call to the right journalist, one encrypted file transfer, and 0 fingerprints. In my world, you didn't scream. You placed information in the correct hands and let gravity do the work. I put my phone away and went to find Elliot. He was in his study, reviewing briefing documents, sleeves rolled to the elbows, reading glasses on. He looked up when I appeared in the doorway. He didn't ask why I'd come. He just took the glasses off and waited. "You said you've been paying attention for 2 years, I said. "I have. Tell me what you noticed." He set down the document. He told me. Not a catalog of my accomplishments or my status. He told me about the things he'd observed, the way I'd poured a glass of water for a junior staffer at a function when the waitstaff missed him, and how I'd done it without drawing attention to it. The way I'd answered a loaded question from a hostile journalist with a precision that left no openings but somehow left the journalist's dignity intact. The moment at the charity gala where I'd been standing alone by the window for 4 minutes while the room hummed around me, looking out at the city, and how he'd watched me and thought, "That man carries something heavy, and he carries it without leaning on anyone." "I want to be someone you can lean on," he said. "Not because I want to carry it for you, because I think you've been carrying it alone for long enough, and I think you're tired, and I think you'd be better with a partner who is actually worth the wait." I crossed the room. I sat down in the chair across from his desk. "I'm afraid," I said. It was the most honest sentence I had spoken in years. He said, "I know. So am I. You're not an easy man to love, Soren. You're precise and you're private, and you have exactly 0 tolerance for anything that feels like performance." He paused. "That terrifies me because I have to show up, completely and every time, with no room for shortcuts. But I'd rather be afraid of the right thing than comfortable with the wrong one." On the 6th day, he took me to the restaurant a second time and ordered the lamb again because I'd said I'd been thinking about it. And when the waiter arrived with 2 glasses of wine I hadn't asked for, Elliot said quietly, "I asked them to pair something with the lamb. Is that all right?" Not, "I took the liberty," not, "You're welcome in advance," just, "Is that all right?" I looked at him across the candlelight and felt something in my chest shift, not crack, not break, but shift, the way a door shifts when it's been opened from the inside for a very long time. "Yes," I said, "that's all right." On the 7th day, the last day, we walked back to the ridge. The morning was clear and brutally cold, the kind of cold that made every breath feel like proof of something. Below us, the valley was white and still, the kind of silence that only existed at altitude and first light. "I don't know how to do this slowly," I said. "I thought I did last time. I was patient for almost a year, and it turned out I was the only one who was." "I know." "I'm going to be difficult. I'm going to test things, not deliberately, but because I can't help it. I'm going to look for the exits for a long time." "I know that too." He turned toward me, his breath a thin cloud in the cold air. "I'm not asking you to stop doing any of that. I'm asking you to let me pass the tests. I'm asking you to keep looking for exits and let me be the reason you don't take them." The moon goddess had been patient with me my entire life. She'd waited through 31 years of closed doors and deliberate distance, and the very specific armor of a man who had never met another person he trusted enough to put the armor down for. I turned to look at Elliot Vane, at the steadiness of him, the gray eyes, the unhurried quality of his attention, the way he'd spent an entire week being exactly what he claimed to be, and nothing more and nothing less. "I'm not ready to call this what it is," I said. "That's fine. But I'm not ready for it to be over either." "Even better." He extended his hand, not a romantic gesture, a pact. The kind of handshake that meant, "I see you, and I'm not going anywhere, and we can define the terms as we go." I took his hand. The valley below us was vast and white and perfectly silent, and for the first time in a year, for the first time in longer than that, if I was honest, I wasn't calculating the distance to the exit. I was standing still in the cold with my hand in someone else's, and it felt less like surrender and more like arriving. 3 months later, I transferred the deed on a property in Montana's Glacier Ridge County, a 5-bedroom estate overlooking the valley I'd stood in on that last cold morning. I bought it outright, the way I did everything. In my name only, this time. When Elliot arrived and saw the keys on the kitchen counter, he picked them up and turned them over in his hand and said nothing for a long moment. "Soren, don't make it a thing." "I'm absolutely making it a thing. It's an investment property. In my county, with a view of the trail we walked on day 7. Market conditions. Soren." I turned from the window. He was looking at me with that gray water gaze, the one that saw exactly what I was doing and declined to pretend otherwise. "It's not a deed, it's a statement. Everything I do is a statement. That's how I communicate." He crossed the room, and when he was close enough that his scent, chocolate and vanilla, always chocolate and vanilla, was the only thing I could think about, he put his hands on either side of my face and looked at me with the specific attention of a man who had waited 2 years for the right moment. "I'm not going to lose this," he said. Not a declaration, a promise, precise and unperformed, the way I needed everything to be. "You'd better not. I only have 1 house left to sell." He laughed. It was a real laugh, the kind that went all the way to the eyes, and I filed it away in the place I kept things I intended to protect. The valley outside was white and still. Inside, for the first time in longer than I could measure, so was I. The end.